Mr. Adam Gubman. We're going to be listening to some of your favorites, or I guess like some of my favorite Arknights songs. Of course, you've written for many, many games. How are you?
I'm good. You're so nice. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. You know, I think everybody should know, Marco, that you and I are actually friends. It does get a little bit like people in YouTube land when they watch your videos, which are incredibly popular. And I'm so lucky to have such awesome fans of Arknights music. But like, we became friends through this community, and that's legit. And so Marco is an actual friend. So if I'm being weird or we're being silly, it's just because we already know. So
I do love that people call you Adam Gubman.
I don't love it, actually, because
you don't.
No, well, for a couple of reasons, but the main reason is because I feel like the implication is goat, and I don't see myself as that. I mean, just in Arknights alone, between like
so many good composers,
Obi and David and all these guys, you know, over at Hexany and other contributors from across the globe. I mean, Arknights has some of the coolest people involved with the music creation. I hear other folk songs all the time, and I'm blown away by the production and just presentation and creativity and all that. So it sets the bar high, dude. I definitely feel like I fit in with that crowd to some degree, but also like some of those guys' songs, I'm like, how the hell do they do some of that pop production is just, and I consider myself a pop guy, and I'm hearing shit that I'm like, sorry, it's a family channel.
No, you can swear.
Oh, I can? No, shit. Hell yeah.
Shit.
I'm blown away by the quality of production from some of these other guys. So that's why I'm like, I would rather be like, instead of Goatman, like a part of the group, man. Just one of the guys, man.
So you heard it here first.
One of the
Don't say Adam Gubman in the comments. Say Adam, one of the other guys in the composition team.
No, man. I actually think it's cute, but my family laughs at me. They're like, dude, if they only knew you for reals, they wouldn't think so highly of you, you big nerd. I'm like, really? Leave me alone and let me build my Magic the Gathering decks in peace. It's like when I'm not writing music, it's like I'm playing video games and other nerdy stuff because that's what I do.
Oh, it's bad. I mean, there are days where I'll get done with a stream for like 4 hours, and then I'm like, we eat dinner, and then I just start playing another video game, and then I'll like cycle through like 8 different games at one time. Just like I have these like penchants. I'm such a variety person. I was telling my fiance, it's like I've always been like this my whole life. I'm very serious about like 1 or 2 things that I'm very committed to, and then everything around that, I'm just a massive cheater. It's very rare for me to commit to like a specific game because I love playing like 10 different things at one time. It just depends on my mood. But like when it comes to my family and when it comes to my work, I'm like hyper fixated. It's very funny.
Yeah, I mean, games, that's how I kind of roll that way too. My wife asks me all this because I always tell her, I'm like, you should jump on Diablo or you should jump on something else, because we play World of Warcraft and we played that since it came out. One of my best friends and my best man in my wedding was the original composer on that game. So we got into World of Warcraft in 2006. And so we've been playing it almost like religiously since 2019 again. But we played it for a couple years when it first came out. And then we're like, we're spending too much time. Let's take a break. So I always ask Allison, I'm like, we should definitely do something else. We should play something else. She's like, I don't know how you can play more than one game at a time. I'm like, you've been playing this game for like 20 years. Like, when are you going to go on to another game? But right now, like I just downloaded Dredge, and I've been playing that a lot, and I love Dredge.
Dredge is cool.
Weirdly fun. And then I'm back on Diablo because I cycle through. My kids play, like, they turn me on to games all the time too. My daughter's trying to get me to play Omori, and I haven't played that yet.
Omori.
Yeah, it's so much fun. She's finishing her Fallout playthrough right now, my 15-year-old. But then she just got done with Red Dead, her second full playthrough on that also. So my kids have
one or the first one?
Second playthrough on Red Dead 2. Yeah, she won't. I told her, I said, try Red Dead 1, and she's like, I don't know, because the mechanics are a little bit more ancient.
Yeah, but I just started playing the remaster on my PlayStation, and that 60 FPS. Oh, it's sweet, dude. It looks so good. It plays the same. She should play it. Well, speaking of your daughter, actually, is this the daughter that helped you on? Oh God, what's that track? That was segueing, is what I was doing.
Yeah, God.
Whistle Stop.
You're good at your job. I forgot, dude. They called it Whistle Stop, but. It was Logos's theme. There's a new expansion, a new series called Absolved Will Be the Seeker. And the stuff is released a little sooner, the Arknights fan team in Vietnam. So they have a pretty big Discord too, but I don't know where they get the official videos. I'm pretty sure that they're getting them from Hyperglyph, because I can't imagine
probably the Chinese server.
Yeah, because I think that in China they might be released, but they don't get released on the American
globally. Yeah,
server.
There's a delay. Totally. We don't actually know when. I was telling you before, but I've been playing Arknights literally, so it's like reading. So it's crazy because it's actually like more like a giant book with like many different stories, and like some of these are like 60,000 words. Like I just did Izzi di Gusano, which is the Italian mafia story that deals with Texas, and I wasn't expecting to get as sucked into it, but I was like, I want like something with a really good story that I can sort of like casually, but also fully invest myself into, and I accidentally became like really engrossed. So. After listening to all this music for so long, but so your daughter helped you on the lyrics for this?
Yeah, she's actually a really stellar songwriter, and it blows my mind how quick she can do stuff. So for that song, I gave her the second verse, and I told her, I was like, just write me a second verse, and I paid her like I would pay any other writer that I've worked with. I don't often collaborate. There's been just a few over the years that I'll let write lyrics with me, because I'm really especially particular over the lyrics, because I consider myself a storyteller first. But my daughter has a real gift for lyric writing. About 2 years ago, when she'd started really writing songs, I was like, she would show me her lyrics, and I'm like, your metaphor, like everything she does is so top quality. She has no idea. She just sits down and it just pours out of her so quickly. But she also has a penchant for like really complex harmonic progressions, and she hasn't had a ton of music theory yet. She sings in her high school choir, and she's been taking guitar for a couple years. And her guitar teacher, Kane, who's also one of my guitar players that I hire regularly, he's a brilliant composer, so he's sneaking it in. But he's funny because he'll always be like, well, should I teach you this or you want your dad to? I'm like, no, dude, you do it. She won't listen to me. She'll listen to me, but she won't listen to me. Like, go teach her.
Yeah, she like, does that. Yeah, it goes over.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's listen to this. I mean, I have not heard this, so I'm intrigued by this.
Okay, so I will say, like, I had written some stuff for Hoarder before, and these two songs are related. Okay, so if you're familiar, if your listeners are familiar with Hoarder's theme and Settle Into Ash, which was a tune that I had written. The rap part was written by one of my friends for like 20 plus years. His son, who's a rapper, he's a rapper also, and I was working with him back in 1999 because I'm old. But his son is now a brilliant rapper, and so I've been involving him with some of my stuff when I need rap, because I get asked to write a lot of rap, believe it or not. So he wrote the rap section for the Hoarder tune. And then we had Tell Smith sing lead vocals on that. And so some of the thematic elements from that, it was requested that I incorporate those into this tune. And so there are some bridge elements and stuff that work as transition between the two songs. And so they're meant to be kind of a saga between the two, showing Hoarder and Logos and that whole...
I see.
I don't want to spoil anything, but for the fans...
Yeah, cool. Okay.
And, that's kind of where it is. But that was the request.
Solemn tone in my words and shattered bone. Am I talking to myself? Who's in control? Guarding those long gone with a haunting simple song, rising waves of bodies save the world from all you've wronged. I can feel the fall. Leave behind your dead. I will make them mine. They animate you. sign.
I take it back. So the Hoarder stuff is actually in Broken Sign. I'm getting confused. The crossovers are confusing a little bit. So we had some stuff that relates to Mortal Eye. Actually, it's a different storyline. It's related.
Sure. Well, you do so much. I mean, you can't be expected to remember every plot thread.
I forgot, and I'm barely hanging on to the ones that I do have to remember.
So that's the first time I heard that, and obviously I'm a fan of your music. I love the vocalism in this. So one of the things, you do this frequently actually, but one of the things I really liked about this, the singer, there's almost like such a raw quality in that, and like this is clearly a character that's like kind of like there's a mournful sound quality in here. Like there's a sadness. And what I really like is the lilting quality that occurs in this. Like a lot of the melody lines kind of pitch down. And then obviously when we get to the chorus, it's almost like, okay, well, like I've suffered a lot, but I've never done this in front of a composer before. This feels so awkward, but
I like it.
I always do this in the comfort of my own face.
No, that's great. I'm going to just tell you where you're
like
wrong.
Yeah. What I really like about it, the guitar is super like, I love that you chose to have a guitar be like the main instrument. Like it clearly has a soundscape of being broken down and trying to rebuild. I also really like the church bell thing. That's really cool because that, when do we hear church bells? We hear it in religious contexts. So like it almost feels like an awakening of a personal identity. I also really liked the callbacks with the whispers that are there. Like, especially near the back half, like, it's almost like he's, like, talking to himself. I really, really, really like that there's a line about whistles, and then you play a whistle. Thought that was really nice, a nice touch.
Thank you. It's
very clearly a tormented character that, but is trying to pick their lives back up. And that's really the theme. And I love the chorus. Also the dissonance, I was laughing about that a lot because I kept thinking that the pitch was going to go in a direction and then you'd be like, surprise. And I'm going to be like, damn it. Okay. There's a lot of dissonance in this, but like, it's nice because it causes us as listeners to like tune in a little bit more rather than what we expect the tonal like resolution to be. It's really, really cool. It's really cool. This is just going to be a blow smoke up your ass episode, clearly.
No, I mean, I want to talk about some of that stuff because I can't take full credit for all the direction always. I mean, we get some pretty specific requests, okay? And part of my job with not just Arknights, but with a lot of other games is to do the weirdest shit of the weirdest shit. And so my friends at Hypergriff tease me that they can throw like whatever request at me and I'll just kind of like make it work. One of my favorite things to do is to combine compound chords with simple pop melodies. And I think that it's very evocative. And, it reminds me a little bit of what one of my favorite artists, Ben Folds, had said once, is that he loves putting swear words in love songs and ballads. It's like his comfort zone is just being like, just a little bit inappropriate. And I think that's kind of like where I also feel comfortable is like kind of twisting stuff and pushing some of those boundaries a little bit. But with Logos, this character, like I'm looking at what they sent me because they send me like a spec sheet, right? And the spec sheet has the requirements, what they're looking for, what they want me to do. They gave me only one paragraph for this. So in order for me to like understand more about Logos, because I hadn't played this yet, because this is a new character. Well, this storyline is new for this particular part of the game. I went through the Wikipedia and I was looking at his history and all this. And so I was trying to include stuff of that. It says he's serious and solemn, carrying a hint of melancholy due to his inherent nature of being a banshee, originating from Celtic mythology. So the Celtic side of it is what inspired some of that. And they had made some requests for bone flutes and church bells and stuff. And I'm like, cool, I'll put it in there. And I love that because it does kind of bring out that sort of sacred quality. It says his demeanor is steady with very few significant fluctuations in emotions. He's the only male among the banshees. So he happens to be the Lord of the Banshees. If you go to just like the Arknights Wikipedia, I'm gonna just do this so you understand kind of where I come from when we're coming up with the lyric.
Yeah.
That Piper, my daughter, I'm actually diving pretty deep into character traits and magical abilities and historical references from the characters and the way they interact. I'm looking for thematic elements that I can tie into what Arknights wants me to, what Hypergriff is asking me to write about. For this song, they did something that they normally don't do, which is give me like a breakdown of what they want to happen in the intro and the verses and the choruses. So they had made some recommendations for instrumentation, but the temp music that they sent over, some of it was kind of like heavier stuff, and they had made some references to like metal, but without it being metal. So the original version of the song that I had written, the hook was in 5/4. It was still in 5/4, but it had like a real like heavy drive to it, and the way that I sang it, because I sing my own demos, was more aggressive. And then they had asked me to pull that back and to make it more beautiful because he's elegant. And so the feedback and what they were trying to get me to do was to use some of that edgier energy, but have his voice be elegant. So the singer, Emmanuel, I think I always mess up his last name. I think it's Veracruz. He sings in a band called Email, and they're like a progressive indie band here in California. And one of my best friends and one of our writers at Moonwalk, Joris, he's the drummer in that band. And so I got to know them through that. He also plays cello, and he played cello on this. In their band, he plays cello and sings, and he does some really cool creative stuff. But his voice has this really kind of like floaty, luxurious, velvety quality to it.
Yeah.
And I knew that would bring elegance to it. So when I was looking for a singer for it, I specifically chose one that would do just that, to offset some of the edgier rhythmic stuff that we were doing. It said what they were asking me for is they were asking me for like bone flutes and stuff because they wanted that Celtic niche. So I explored some of that, used similar bone flutes and similar folk elements that I used in Mortal Eye, which my friend Bonzi sang, because I was trying to tie together that sort of the Celtic mythology side of it. And that's how I did that. Obviously, it's not true Celtic mythology, but it's like, fantasy version of Celtic mythology.
It got pared back then, so we kind of left the metal and ended up more in it feels more emotional. It is interesting how like a metal aesthetic has a very different sound quality than in a sort of acoustic sound quality, obviously.
Oh, you're
but
right.
It seems like Absolutely. They pulled all the way. It seems like you pulled back more on the retakes.
I did. So I was looking to see where my original Logos demo was. Oh, here it is from March. You might be able to hear it. I think I can turn it up here. So I had this like really like dramatic orchestral thing, and then So I was doing like, instead of the leave behind your dead, I was doing like a double time thing. But I had to pare it back because they said it was too aggressive. And so cutting the melodic rhythm in half, I reduced half of the words too, because I'm like notoriously wordy when I write. And so I cut out a lot of words. And I've been learning, I think, as I'm maturing, to tell the story and to tell stories with less words and make them more meaningful, right? Like I talk a lot too, and I think that I have a tendency to out-talk people. Sorry, Marco. But that was the sort of the evolution of that. And then with the guitar, that is Jeff Askew, who I've been working with forever, like for 15, 16 years, and he's played on a ton of my stuff. And he's such a great acoustic player. I mean, he's a good electrical player too, but his acoustic chops are fantastic.
It's sensitive. It's really sensitive.
Yeah, he does a good job of clean playing and coming up with the right instrument to use. He's got a nice kit bag of stuff. So it's not always acoustic guitar. Sometimes he pulls out banjos, and sometimes he pulls out mando and uke, and sometimes those are the right sounds,
It is interesting how much of it is like an organized effort where, yes, the composer gets credit, but there is like 4, 6, 8 people involved in a process and to make something kind of come together. I mean, certainly I think it's interesting how the finished product, I think, is exactly like right. Obviously, we know that there's no such thing as right or wrong in music, and that like there's always another iteration. Like they could send this back like 6 months from now and be like, "Hey, Adam, we need to fix this, and that." They're not going to. But my point is like that you're never finished when you've done, like when you release something. That was one of the things that was always really hard with opera, is that like you are where you are on that day, and if it sucks that day, that's what you're presenting. And I find it sort of interesting that even in this sort of audio recording world, like you're never technically done, and it, you may be actually really unhappy with something, but it has to get made and has to get out there. And you kind of just have to like, okay, it's finished, even though it's not finished. You know what I mean? It's such an interesting thing.
Well, yeah. And that's just a good reminder that music is alive, because then you get the cover song versions, and those times evolve beyond what, you know, we would have thought for that song, and they make it more interesting. And I like covering songs. That's where I really honed my arrangement chops, or where I learned how to do so much, is by doing arrangements of stuff. You know, taking something that's already established and just notching it up a couple of bits, making it my own.
It's also interesting too, though, because like, I mean, in theory, nothing, and I talked to Austin about this, and I'd love your take too. Like, the idea that once you create something, it really is no longer yours. You sort of, it's yours, is that it's your baby, but you like release it to the world, and however people choose to interpret it or rearrange it or whatever is sort of like, it's like, do you feel an ownership with your songs? You just kind of like, okay, next, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. I'm not surprised Austin said that. I know Austin pretty well, and I think we feel the same about this. And I think that's part of the process of removing your ego from the composition process, is just understanding that once you let these baby birds fly away, they will not come back to you. And when they do, they're going to be different from before. You can go back and listen to it. It's like looking at pictures of your kids, and you can like reminisce about it, but it doesn't belong to you. Music belongs to everybody. And so, I think that the most poignant example of this is our playlists. Like when you make someone a mixtape, or when you turn on Spotify and you listen to music, it feels intimately yours. And even though, you know, there's millions of people around the world that listen to a certain song, or, you know, dozens or even maybe 100 people involved in the performance of a song, whether, you know, depending on the size of the band or whatever, we put them on our playlist, and then they become part of us and part of our experiences and part of our lives. And so it's hard to differentiate. We don't turn on like, you know, Aerosmith and go, man, I love, you know, let's turn on some of Steven Tyler's songs. No, we go, let's turn on our playlist. Let's listen to our music. And it's evocative of our own personal memories and experiences. And so that's why, you know, music is one of those things in general, and not to be so esoteric about it, but I will, because fuck you. I'm just kidding. No, I will. But I feel like it's one of the only things you can do where you can like really touch and affect someone without ever meeting them or being, you know, like food can kind of do that, but someone else touches the food. But I can send you something across the airwaves and affect your emotional state in a positive or negative way. And that changes on a day to day. And so for me, it's like dangerous territory if I were to hold ownership over all these songs. I think it's also helped that my entire career has been basically writing for other people. I didn't start making royalties until I was working for Warner Brothers and Disney and stuff. And that stuff came back through placements. But writing for others and letting it go has made me very like not devoid of emotion, but devoid of unhealthy ownership over things. Right. And it's very easy for me just to let those go now. I appreciate that quality in myself, because there's so many other things I'm self-conscious about that I don't have to be self-conscious about it, you know. And I think there's a lot of projects that I've worked on where my name just isn't on them, that people just don't know I did. And I'm okay with that too, because it's the process. It's like additive. All these little projects you work on add to the fabric of what you're capable of doing. And so
I even think about that. I did a gig where I had to do an Italian accent, and, you know, I don't, whether or not it's not like a uptrending popular thing, but like I learned a valuable lesson in 5 hours in the booth where like now, okay, first of all, I'm really comfortable doing an Italian accent, like not an Italian accent, sorry, like a Jersey accent, but I'm like really comfortable doing that. And I did an audiobook with an Italian accent, and I was like really self-conscious because I was like, well, no, actually it was fully in Italian. And I was really self-conscious because I was like, okay, well, like, is my Italian up to snuff? Are Italian listeners going to be whatever? Thing went off without a hitch. And like, I was like, okay, yeah, I can speak Italian. I am a, you know, when people ask for a genuine Italian accent, I know that I'm delivering something that I'm not a caricature of something. I wish that I had not internalized some of the achievements in opera, because opera is such a fight or flight sort of, abundance versus scarcity mindset. And pretty much all of it's a scarcity mindset. And so like you really attach yourself to the accomplishments or like whatever. And I wish that I could go back in time and be like, okay, that was really cool, but like, this is actually a part of you are doing it. And I was always like waiting to make it or waiting to arrive, right? But you can't, because it's actually sabotage to do that. And I wish I had known. So it's very interesting to hear you talk about that. And also like, it's so rare for I don't think people, it's funny because we live in a modern time where there is an accessibility to composers who are putting out music. But like, I tell you, for a decade, the only music I was interacting with was the music of people that had been dead 200 years. It's so interesting to have the conversation with you where like, I told you what I interpreted and then you explained the structure. Like that is such a luxury that I didn't realize was capable until starting to really dive into video game music. And I really think that we've totally deviated from the Arknights lexicon, but I think it's important to talk about this stuff because there are living, valuable and meaningful composers alive right now doing stuff for people's and especially in the case of Arknights, on their iPad, you know what I mean, on their phone.
And you know what I think is really fascinating about art in general is that we have these masters that we've called the masters, but they didn't know that they were the masters.
They had no clue, right?
And all of our study in music, and this is kind of what pissed me off about getting my degree, is we would look at composers, and the academic world makes these really broad scope, like broad stroke analyses of all the music of a certain time period. And they go, okay, well, this is what was popular back then. But then you look at like the anomalies and they go, oh, well, there's outliers and we can't count them, like Bach. Like he was like, okay, there's some flat nines in there and there's some flat sixes and there's some really complex harmonic structures. But we're going to gloss over that to look at his like counterpoint instead, because that's what,
yeah.
Like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Like there's so much advanced harmonic theory that comes out of stuff that we gloss over the course of history because it doesn't fit the mold of what was going on at that particular time. And so we go, well, okay, well, let's just forget about that. But that's the stuff that excites me as an artist. And other artists are going to find things that excite them as well. So when you go to school for art, you get bombarded with all these, like, study this and learn this and whatever. But in the midst of all that, each individual composer is latching onto something that feels familiar to them and helps to kind of like reinforce their own ideology about music. So I remember being told in college not to focus so much on melody, but I'm so in love with melody that
what the hell else would you
focused on? You know, I mean, like we look at music as a reflection. You look at it and you pick out things that relate to you. And that's how we as listeners consume. So why as an artist should I not do that? And having professors tell me, don't look at your own reflection in this music. Look at other shit. Okay, well, I get it. You're trying to expand my palette. But ultimately, I ended up writing fucking melodic pop shit anyway. So what was, and granted, I've always liked complex stuff and sometimes over complex stuff, but that's not why I became a composer. I became a composer because that's how I like to tell stories. And I was kind of good at piano when I was younger. And so it was easy. I really wanted to, I still do. I want to like, you know, do theatrical stuff and tell stories and make film and do that and animation and that. And that's what's exciting is the storytelling part, you know?
What's fucked up to me though, is that like, especially in the classical music scene, I mean, like, you know, in conservatory, you come out of those institutions and the composition staff is telling you exactly what your experience was. Is that, you know, if you look at the modern operatic lexicon, just as like a frame of reference, like there's only like 30 composers that like Jake Heggie and like a couple others. But like, other than that, there's nobody that's writing melody because there is a whole like like a contingent of composers that come out of school that are forced to write basically atonal, almost exclusively rhythmic syllabic text. Like no one knows how to like match. And that was something I noticed in this too, is that you did such a great job, like, you know, extending words, like, which is such like a basic thing. But like, there are people that don't do that. And they put a word like modern recitativo. I went to the store today to buy a pair of bread.
Yeah, prosody doesn't really exist that way because they look at the voice as an instrument instead of a storytelling device, and that's the problem. Right. And you know what you're saying about the emotion, and we can like kind of think John Cage and all that I Ching shit that he was doing because remember, and this is what listeners don't realize, maybe some do that have had a little bit of music, but in the 50s there was in the 60s there's this whole movement where people go, we've done everything. What do we have left to explore? Because romantic music and impressionism was all about broadening the scope of what we see emotionally in music, and you go further back and it's like music had one emotion, like Baroque was one emotion per song, and then Romanticism was a lot of that shit. And then in the mid-century, people go, well, you know what, fuck all of that, we're going to take it all away. How can we create music without our own emotions, our own ego involved? It was like the pointillistic approach where you're like throwing painted paper and whatever sticks, sticks. And that concept of removing emotion from music made it incredibly academic, and it goes against everything in human nature. Everything. And so I have a really adverse reaction to that, not because I don't appreciate the art and the procedure, but because I know that we are emotional creatures. We are expressive creatures. By nature, that is how we operate. Right. In the animal world, that's how they fucking operate too. Anybody with a cat will tell you that, or a dog. That's what they do. Yeah. They express emotion. They want love. Love is the crux of how we write music. So if you're not coming from a place of love or admiration or pain, which is just love in reverse, but it's still fueled by love, like we can't have pain without love. What's not physical pain, emotional pain. I can punch myself in the face and I don't love that. But the act of loving is like all of that terrible stuff also that we have to balance out. And you can't just go, I'm going to flip a coin on the I Ching like John Cage did and go, that's how I'm going to make music. Because what's at the other end of your music? A listener with emotion, a listener with their own life experiences. And people come to music because they're desperately looking for some reassurance that they are okay. When we listen, we're like, am I okay? Because we question that. Nobody's totally confident. And even people that come off as the most confident, they are not always okay. And they look for that in food and art and relationships and music. And we provide that as composers. We go, hey, look, I'm an asshole too. Like I'm a piece of shit and I'm going to write that in my music. I'm a lover. I'm put that in my music. I've been through some terrible stuff. I've been through pain and I've been through like depression and I've been through all this, and I'm going to put that in the music. And you as listener, I hope you find that too. So we can go, hey, we're just a little bit more human. That is so important. So when composers nowadays go, oh, well, we're going to do this thing where we just like throw words there and the prosody doesn't matter. It does matter. It does, because even like my wife, who is not a classical we were at I'm not going to say the college, but we were at a college listening to a new work by a composer that is fairly well known for being a vocal composer. He's younger. He's in his early 30s. His stuff has gotten a lot of play, but it was the worst porosity I'd ever heard. And guys like David Lynn, they can fucking spin words like magic, and they feel right. And people know when stuff doesn't feel right. And this particular piece of classical music was set lyrics. And the music was beautiful, but he would take a word like and just go, and I'm like, bro, like that's, it just, and you as an opera singer, it must drive you crazy to have to sing vocal music where the porosity is not linguistically sound.
Oh, dude, well, it physically hurts as well. I mean, I did a workshop, and we'll get back to Arknights here in about 2 seconds.
Oh, I forgot we're doing that.
I did a workshop where it was so painful. And it felt like glass on my cords. And then guess what? A week later, when that show ended, we were doing a little tour of La Boheme, and I swear it was like butter on bread, my man. Like it was just like, because you can't, because like there's something about legato fluid writing that just feels naturally easy. Now let's listen to some more Arknights. Speaking of natural and easy, let's listen to one of my favorite songs you've ever written, or that I know anyway. And let's listen to Magic Theorem. I listen to this song a lot.
So before you listen to this, I will link me to it so I can put it up here. Sarah Kang was actually the temp music for this track. She has like a summery song that was really popular, and they sent me that.
They're mowing the lawn.
Is that what that is? Cool, man.
They're mowing the lawn.
I love the Midwest and East Coast. We don't have lawns in California. Everything is dry and dead, so that's lovely. Sarah was an easy pick for this, and she was very accessible. I think the song, what is that song? It's like Summer's Made for Love or something like that. And it was on some TV commercials and everything. And she's just such a brilliant talent that when I wrote it with her in mind. And then I reached out to her, and she was like, sure, let's do it. So, and we've kind of kept in touch, and she's on tour. I think she's had a baby. She's really really just a cool person and a great singer.
Awesome. Let's do it. Yeah, I really actually love this. This may be one of my, I mean, I haven't heard all of your repertoire, but in terms of like melody use and playfulness in here, I think this is like, it's like a joy to listen.
When the sun fades out of sight, constellations come to life. The serotonin keeps us floating. We contemplate our lives. Though the numbers safe and sound, my hypotheses abound. I've got a theory, you're there with me, transcending data found. Take a picture, don't forget her, let it linger in your view. The formula for finding magic, 1+1, just me and you. Falling for a simple dream, a theorem of a fantasy. I live fully. If patterns prove us right, more than particles and light, it's simple science, full compliance that keeps me up at night. Take a picture, don't forget her, let it linger in your view. The formula for finding magic, 1+1, just me and you. Falling for a simple dream, a theorem of a fantasy. I la 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 la. Live fully. Life is a gift to me. I'm here for you. Like a smile at a party, I swoon. Measure time by the moon. Is it over too soon? Take a picture, don't forget her. Let it linger in your view. The formula for finding magic, 1+1, just me and you. Take a picture, don't forget her. Let it linger in your view. Formula for finding magic, 1+1, just me and you. Falling for a simple dream, a theorem of a fantasy. I la 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 la.
I love the muted trumpets and just it's interesting because it has this like jazz vibe, but the chorus is just so satisfying to listen to, and it has this real warm, like tender embrace. And obviously I think this character Dorothy is like some sort of doctor or something. But,
Yeah, she
but
works
just
in
the
the lab.
energy in that.
I was trying to find the
Yeah.
materials on it because it's been a minute. And I was trying to remember what I was doing because I have like things kind of archived. And I think, I mean, those 251s is that. So I found the Dorothy folder. It had some really great musicians on here. This gal from back east playing trumpet. And then I was trying to find the actual Dorothy live so I can remember exactly who it was, because it was so. This was actually done in 2022, the beginning of 2022. I had a couple of great musicians that I was using at the time, and I was exploring some new stuff. And I find a lot of musicians off of TikTok, and I'd found this gal that played trumpet out of the East Coast, and she played on here.
What I find really nice about your music and a lot of the Arknights in general is how clear the emotional state is. As a singer and as a performer, it's really easy when a composer like really hands like the emotion to you, so that then you as an interpreter can then take that and interpret it in the right way. I really like that, and it's something that you do really well. That is just like, and I think it goes back to this conversation that we were having about emotion over technicality, and like you do need technicality to be able to compose, but you also need to have emotion forward in order for it to be interpreted. And like if a piece doesn't come from the heart of the composer, then how is it able to be like sung by a person? You know what I mean? Because that all that stuff is an expression of the self, whatever the self is for whoever is singing or performing.
That's really spot on. I feel like emotion is something that you can guide in music a little bit, and I try to do that, but where I love the surprise of the joy of production for me comes from giving musicians autonomy to do things and being surprised by what the choices that they make are, and that allows me to have more of a palette to choose from. So like on this track, I did have some horn arrangements, some brass stuff that we had done, but allowing the musicians to kind of like express themselves over it, and then to get a couple of tracks back that's like a bunch of like trumpet solos, and I can cut those up and use those. It's like having your own sample library, sort of, and I really value that. I value the experience and contribution of other musicians quite a bit, and I couldn't do this without all the folks that I get to work with. There's a lot of things that are just in a box, and that's fine, but not with Arknights. With Arknights, Hypergriff allows me the luxury of being able to kind of make choices that I normally wouldn't get to make in other places, with projects that are a little more confining from a budgetary perspective. Of course. So it's nice to be able to employ some of those techniques. So what you're hearing is like really the result of my own freedom with those things, including like the way that the budget's used and stuff. Some of my bigger clients don't allow for that all the time. Clients that are doing like AAA shooters that I work on, for example, they don't have the budget for stuff, and so I end up having to like pay out of pocket. We just did a big expansion for a game that will not be named that's very popular. I really can't reveal details other than saying without the live instruments, it would not have evoked the style that they were asking me to evoke. I had written, and this was a co-write with a very dear friend of mine, Mason Lieberman, who's a wonderful composer. What he came up with and what I came up with would not have even been available to us without using some of the great musicians that we use. So he and I just paid for the musicians, and I'm glad we did. But it's one of those things where we have to. So
well, there's something, and it's very interesting because when I've had non-gamers and like composers or conductors or opera singers or other various musicians on the channel that when they listen to video game music for the first time, my threshold for the difference between live and sampled is pretty like, I mean, I don't necessarily care so long as an emotion is conveyable and it's easily like registerable for somebody. Like, so that way somebody who's not musically trained can be like, oh, I feel nervous. I feel tension. I feel fear. I'm nervous. Wow, this is epic. Whatever. Like, right. Like, obviously my job is to find the nuance in there so that people can hear things from a different, like a more deep perspective. But it's interesting to me how many times you get like I had a conductor on who hated sampled music because he felt it was just devoid of emotion. And that's his prerogative to feel that way. But it's an interesting thing because there's a game that I really dearly love that the composer is phenomenal, and they're doing a tour right now where they are able to like orchestrate a lot of these tunes that were done via samples. And I'm so happy because finally his music is being like done, not that it needs to be done with an orchestra, but the fact that it's done with an orchestra, it just adds a layer of humanity that I think like it does get lost. No matter how good a sample is, it is just slightly, and maybe this is elitist and I don't intend it this way, but it's just we're talking about the connection of human emotion with music. And if you don't have a human playing it, you do maybe slightly castrate it. Not all the way, but just a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't know. What's your take on that? Because you're the composer.
Well, I think that there's something to be said about having breath in a flute track, and hearing the seat move when you're a violin player, and like the rosin on the bow and the knocking of the wood on the guitar. Those are all things that I cherish. I mean, I'm not the only one that feels this way, but back in the 90s when like Alanis Morissette and Hole, Garbage, Nirvana, like alt pop and all that, they were making records, Natalie Merchant, all these guys, they did not have auto-tune, and they did not have Pro Tools for editing. Well, they did, but it wasn't the same. But most, like the records that we were making back then, we were making on Alesis ADATs, and like our editing was like, we didn't really have it. But now we got someone drilling next door. So your lawnmower and my drill, we got a whole fucking construction. I really do value the human side of things. And that's why like I try on bigger projects, even when, I got a whole little Native American flute collection and easy to play, pentatonic flutes, because I want to be able to do things that incorporate voice. And even back when I first started, I was recording shakers and little instruments on my own, because it's a little bit of that goes a long way. And I'm not done with it yet, but I'm almost done building my Gertie, and I got this like nerdy Gertie kit from my friend got it from the Netherlands, and it's like 3D printed parts, and like actually it's operable, and it's got the keys. But it's I'm almost done with it. I got to restring it and stuff, but like being able to do this, like I work on a Game of Thrones project, a couple of them actually. And so to have instruments that are real instead of using a Gertie library, it's different.
To be honest, I'm not fully aware of like what the capacities are for an Ableton or whatever, but like, there is something to be said about like when you can't tell if it's like if the legato is real. Really you said breath, and it's true. The legato is such a key fundamental part of musicianship, and like when you when it's not every note, you know what I mean? That's when the humanity sort of comes through. It's so important,
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely.
Let's listen to like two more, because we've been having a lot of chats in between. Well, I'll let you pick. You want Echoism, Terra Investment Masterclass?
Let's do that Terra Investment Masterclass. Did you listen to that before?
No, I didn't listen to it. I want to listen to it and hear it with you. So.
Be ready to be assaulted by lots of loud noises.
All in and I always say, always just what makes my day. Done is never, none's a boy. All is what I came here for.
Oh, when I swing, I always win. When I place a bet and I'm all in. All is never not the score. And all of the bodies hit the floor.
That's so high. Holy shit, that trumpet.
Yeah,
nice resolution.
It's the only thing I've ever sang lead on for Arknights.
Oh, that is you?
At the very beginning, it's we had the like the gospel-y vocals. That's Bryson Camper. He did the arrangements too on that, the gospel arrangement, which I freaking love. He's a genius. And I had sent him some stuff, but I was like, just expand on it. And so he did. He had some really great stuff. And then Abdiel Gonzalez sang the first couple lines, and then I just used all my demo vocals for the rest of it because I just wanted to be wild and crazy. But we had a full band on that. It's
that's so high on that trumpet. That's wild.
Oh yeah. So that was distorted alto sax, I think, in the middle there, and it's like they're literally breaking down the house next door. Band on that, Josh Plotner, Sean Billings. I can't remember which bone player played on that. It might have been Dave, but I really can't remember. There's a couple of, we're moving pretty quick over here, so there's I can't remember all the musicians all the time. But we did 3-part trumpet. We did full sax section, including bari sax, and then 2 bone parts. So it's like having a full jazz band almost. And they all record at home, and they send me their parts, and I edit it together, and we just have a quick conversation. I let them know what I'm looking for, and then I tell them where to solo and what I want them to, kind of the zone to be in, and we just go from there. But that one was supposed to be a joke song, like a meme song, based on the word all, because that's a big meme in Arknights. So the concept of all is like a huge thing for the community. And so that's what we were doing with that song. And it kind of dropped in a weird way, but I love electro swing. I love the Five Nights at Freddy's electro swing song stuff. And so we were like, oh, how do we capitalize on that electric swing thing? I had a hard time. It's a difficult style of music to get right because it's very, the drums are very simple, but then the jazz stuff has a very specific sound that's a little more muted. And to balance those mixes out, pulling out some of the high end out of the brass was the way to do it, and letting kind of the hi-hat and the snare and the kick do the work, and then treating the band like it was a sample, because a lot of electro swing samples jazz and they layer it in. But for this one, we were obviously doing our own arrangement. So if you listen to the track, and they expanded it too, there was a first verse, second verse, but they re-edited it for this purpose. But the song exists in a different form elsewhere. I treated it like a pop song and treated the band like they were samples. And so I wrote it out, but then I sent it to the band, and then I processed it in a way where it feels like it's giving it motion, like propelling it forward. But I EQ'd it to kind of match what some other electro swing groups are doing, where they're sampling, and to get the sound of the sample, putting rolling off some of the low end and boosting some of the low mids and taking out some of the crispiness of the brass is part of the reason why that saxophone felt kind of trumpety and stuff,
I had no clue. It's interesting too, because it does really have a ragtimey swing sort of I find it really unique. That's a piece that I want to listen to 5 more times just so I can really sit with it and think about why I really liked it. But it's one of those things where your initial reaction is one of great pleasure and slight confusion, because I'm always looking for the emotion in a piece, and why does a piece do this emotionally, and why do I feel the way I feel about it? And that one is just it's almost this unrelenting confidence, but there's also it's almost like a duel, like a duelist, or if you're a sword, almost like a musketeer who's really cocky. It's weird how my brain just you know what I mean? That's
really
so
funny
fun.
that you say that, because the concept of that song was for an Arknights expansion where you're pitting 2 bosses against each other. It's a boss battle. Mini game. And so it is. And so instead of making it about battle, it's about betting on which monster is going to win. And so you're and that's what the all in sort of all concept comes from. And so I just made it fun. It was and they're Monster Party. I'm yeah, look at the lyrics. So that's kind of where we went with the lyrics with that. And so that confidence was the key to that. That's really what we were trying to do, is make something silly and irreverent.
It's really good. Ling is one of my favorite characters in Arknights. So, and she's has a rerun in August, and I will be happily, giving you a fee. I'm funding the Adam Gubman, hypergriff train here.
Good. Keep playing.
I'd love to just sort of talk about this because it's very different from everything else we've heard thus far. Now, not that any of the stuff that you do is ever really similar, but I think it's sort of interesting how sharply this deviates with the Chinese instrumentation and stuff. So I really
and I will say that's probably just because Arknights players don't realize that I'm doing a fair amount of gameplay music also. and underscore for the actual game. So we do a lot of Chinese folk influence stuff, and I've had to learn and study and learn how to, because they're looking for a crossover of Eastern and Western. They want like Western sensibility with Eastern motifs and scales and that whole sort of thing. And so that's where a lot of this kind of music comes from. But I've probably done about an hour of this kind of, Chinese influenced big epic music, and it just doesn't have my name on it because folks don't realize. But this is one that does, and so I'm excited to listen to it with you and hear what you think. I believe this song we had maybe 2 string players, 1 trumpet player, 1 horn player, and 1 woodwind player. So Josh Plotner played the woodwinds, Leah Ziegler, and I think Rio Zani played strings. That's violin and viola. And then John Robert Matz played the brass on here. And I believe John Matz played the French horn and the trumpet on this. So just with 3 or 4 musicians, we're able to achieve this.
The full orchestral sound.
The rest of it,
did you use samples for the Arhu and stuff?
On this one, this might be one where we contracted out. I'm going to have to remember, because I think
we'll listen to it.
Let's listen to it, because there are some musicians locally that we've been using for authentic Chinese instruments. Annie Zhu and some other folks that are just brilliant, like guzheng players and pipa players and stuff like that. So let's listen.
Yeah. Oh, I love these drums so much. Man, I love that.
Cool. So
that's so satisfying.
Thank you. The end of that, sometimes I do these things when I'm writing where I'm like, I want to achieve a certain effect. Okay, so at the end there, by the way, the chords are really poppy in that song, and I love that. But what makes it work in the style is the weird mixed rhythms and meters that I just kind of randomly throw in just because I wanted to, like this whole maximalist thing. But at the end with that brass, da 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 da, I wanted it to feel like a reprise of something, like when you bring back in a film or in theater. A theme from somewhere else, because that theme is not heard anywhere else in that song. But when it comes back, it feels like we're hit home and we're in the final stretch. And I'm like, a big theme that I just want to tease for a second. But we might use it later in other things. And so it's fun because when we're building this repertoire, we're actually creating a library of things that are useful and able to be used. And like, for example, the Broken Sun expansion that we just did, which I wrote this whole long-ass song for, and it was kind of pared down for the original record release. The rest of the score is based off of motifs from that, and I didn't do the rest of the score. In fact, I only did one song for that, and the other version, the remix, they just remixed it in Hypergriff and put it out there, but I was credited on it, but they just took my stems and made a new version. And so creating this repertoire is really fun and challenging to be able to put in like thematic elements that are unexpected and new in weird parts of the song is what I was doing at that point. So all the Chinese plucked instruments, the guzheng, the pipa, and there was something else I believe, those were all live, and then the erhu was live also. And Annie Zhu contracted all that and played a lot of those stringed instruments. And wow. Maybe the erhu was done out of New York too, because my friend Josh, the woodwind player on that, he also will contract. He's got an erhu player out there that we've used. I think his name is Andy, and I don't have his direct information. Like I haven't worked with him directly. Josh facilitated that. I sent the score and they recorded that for me out there. Aside from those key solo instruments, the rest was all samples. I love the idea of really utilizing the kind of trading fours, or trading, it's actually just trading one there, but between the erhu and the pipa and letting him just kind of go off. And I'd written those motifs and then requested that they add the idioms that I don't understand, because there's things about those instruments that I just could not, would not be able to reproduce with samples adequately. So it is funny because we had to do some retakes on some of that stuff because Hypergriff had said, well, some of those plucked instruments sound a little bit too close to your samples, and we want people to have no question that those are live instruments, So that was really key to, I think, that whole process there, is letting them just kind of giving them the motifs and going, okay, well, here's the line. Now, can you make it like really sound like erhu-ish, erhu-esque, bring in some of those things that you would naturally do. The thing about the erhu is it's traditionally not used in happy music, I've been told, and I might be wrong about this, but from my friends that are more knowledgeable about Eastern musicology, the erhu is traditionally reserved for more sad stuff. But we've done like funk erhu lately, and we've done all these other things because bridging the gap between East and West, I think, has been a big like tonal motif for Hypergriff. Not just to reach the audience, but also because like the story is more Western in certain ways, and all of that. And so it's kind of like what Miyazaki had done with Joe Hisaishi, which is bring in some of those Disney elements and things. And that's really what they're asking for, is they're asking for the Disney side of me, which is a big side of me, and having me put that into something else. And that's what gives it that anime sort of feel, that sort of like Miyazaki-esque, like that's what I'm reaching for. I don't always hit it, but that's what I'm reaching for with a lot of that.
It's interesting because again, it's feminine, but it's also bombastic. It shows confidence, it shows grace. There's a little bit even of a battle process in there when you have the sort of call and response between the guzheng and the arhu or the erhu, and it's just there's like interesting dance between. That's why I told you earlier, I feel like you're like, because you write female vocals extremely well. You write male vocals really well too, but like Puccini was like a master of like a strong female lead, and I feel like there's a lot of sensuality while also being very strong. It's very interesting. I've noticed this a lot in your music. Not all of them, obviously, but the ones where it really stands out to me. It really stands out. And I actually wonder if the guzhong. I'm just talking.
I love it.
But I love this. But like the guzhong and the erhu could be the dragon and Ling sort of interconnected. Because of that prowess that she has with that dragon. I don't know. It's so cool. And this is what I love about my job is that like interpretation has always been. I get a little bit agitated because there are some folks that believe that video game music should only live to serve the context of where it stems from, which I think, yes, I mean, the context is ultimately, important, but I do think it's a disservice to like really good musical writing to be like, well, I only care about this because it represents this moment in this game, where it's like, one of the nice things about these tracks, well, not this one because this one's the main theme of that particular event, but it's nice because there's so much to digest and to really think about if you allow yourself to think about it. And there's just so much room for interpretation. I could be completely wrong.
No, I don't. I mean, I write programmatic music, obviously, but I'm not writing it just to be programmatic all the time. And I am trying to still bring integrity to everything, and even the little stuff. Sometimes the only time I get frustrated as a composer is when I'm asked to reduce the integrity. And that sounds like a weird thing, but I find it in other ways. I find it in production and mix and all that. So I still bring it in that way. But, a lot of times when we have to dumb down stuff or write stuff that is like less than what we are capable of doing, it's to serve a greater purpose anyway. And so then the integrity becomes like, how are you working in service of the piece? Because, I am in service of myself. Obviously, I want to get more work and I want to leverage the work I've done to help me get there. And some projects I work on don't allow me to do that, which is fine because, again, you're not in service of yourself when you're a composer. You're in service of whatever the medium is. And when someone says, hey, I really enjoyed this, and I like listening to this outside of the context of the product or the experience, then that's a huge compliment. But not everybody is going to always have that response, because some people hate this kind of music and some people, hate vocal music and some people, only listen to like whatever, like radio top 40. And my music, even though I'm writing pop songs, I'm not a top 40 writer. I'm a theatrical writer. So I can write in context of pop, but I'm writing theatrical music. I'll never be able to like do like David Lynn is doing with just like the straight pop stuff. Or you mentioned Jason Walsh before, and like that straight pop stuff is like really like centered pop music. It's great and it can go on the radio, but I just don't want to be that kind of composer. So I am writing stuff that I enjoy, and you just happen to maybe like also what I like. And so that's why there's a click there. But, that's not necessarily a universal vibe, of course, because music is not. But yeah, I do try to make stuff that people will like to listen to outside of it. But it still surprises me when they actually do. Some of the streaming numbers on YouTube have been like wild. So, and I'm very grateful for everybody that has commented and listened and sent me, notes on Twitter, or we get a lot of emails. In fact, I've gotten a lot of emails lately from folks that are asking me questions about things like this, like process and stuff with the Arknights stuff. And I haven't had time to answer them all, but over the summer I will answer some of those for the folks that are really curious. Because like you said before, it's awesome to be able to reach out to people that are accessible. And earlier in my career, I was really lucky and blessed to have access to a lot of folks, through email, and they responded back, and I try to return that kindness, because connection is the only thing that makes the music real, even when it's sampled. Mm-hmm. It's connecting to the people that are listening to it. And so being able to connect with them has been really special for me, because I want to hopefully inspire other folks to do the same thing,
I mean, and ultimately, like, what is the purpose of music but to connect people, via emotion and sound and whatever. So I mean, it's really, I'm grateful to have you on the show, and I'm grateful that we got to listen to a couple tracks, and hopefully people found this really interesting, because I certainly did. I mean, I used to be surrounded by musicians every day, and you go to school and you go to conservatory, and I was just thinking today, like I was like, man, I don't really miss opera anymore, like the sort of like impetus to miss it. I mean, I miss singing and with orchestra and stuff, right? But like the impetus to like want to do that for a living is like basically non-existent. Like sometimes I don't even get jealous anymore. I used, you get jealous of colleagues that do well or whatever. And honestly, I'm like, good for you. Like, I think also because I'm like situated in this career now, and I really love this job, and I do love doing covers and stuff when I get the chance, but it's, Yeah, it's really interesting. Music is such a special thing, and I'm very grateful that I've been able to reconnect to it and meet people like you and all these other incredible just like modern composers that really deserve to be like celebrated. And I don't think that modern composers get celebrated enough, just because people don't fully like, something came up like a game got revealed and people were like, oh my God, the music. And I'm like, yeah, that's such an awesome thing to see, because the games industry has been so preoccupied with gameplay and obviously they're games, but like gameplay and visuals, but like, I hate to say it, but like without the music, those things are kind of hollow.
Yeah, man, I feel you. Art music is not dead. It's alive and well in video games more than anywhere else. Film music has gone so south and it's gotten so bland. We still have our John Powells and we still have our John Williams and the other folks that are still kind of carrying the concept of theme and big integrity in writing. But a lot of film music is just these like long ass holds and occasional drum hits, and people aren't doing what my colleagues and my dear friends are doing in game music. All these cats that studied the same stuff that I studied, that all have uniquely different voices, that are contributing to art in a way that we don't even really understand what it's going to mean over the course of time, because the medium hasn't been around long enough to study the effects of it, not like classical that we've had for hundreds of years and we can say this is the direction it went in. I hope that one day people look back on video game music and they appreciate all of the, blood, sweat, and tears and the thoughtful personalities, the Austin Wintorys and the other folks that are offering real strong educated opinions on why things like this happen and changing the fabric of the way that we listen and the way that we create, because that is happening. And all these younger folks that grew up in video games that are now taking that energy and that spirit and applying it to their own art, that means that we are on like generation 2 or 3 of seeing how this has evolved and changed the way people consume, listen, and analyze. And that means that there's a real art to it that we haven't yet really like dogmaticized. You know what I mean? Like we haven't like textbooks right now about
codified.
Yeah, the textbooks about game music now are very much about procedural industry related things, like how gigs were gotten, how certain composers like made their money and all that, but not a lot of them are talking about the artistic contribution of game music on the whole. And I'm excited, 30, 40 years from now for people to look back and go, yeah, like the stuff that, John Matz and these other cats are doing and Gerard Marino and Jason Hayes and some of the earlier guys that, George Sanger, that really contributed a lot to the fabric of music in the 90s and early 2000s. Like, where does that leave us? Where does that lead us? Look, and not just the amazing composers that came out of Japan during the Sega Nintendo heyday, but I'm talking about like late PlayStation era stuff, like Grant stuff that he had done for like all of those great Rareware games, and like that's all really important to music theory, and I really hope one day someone goes back and looks at this massive body of work and figures out like where art music is taking a turn, because I think it's a really positive development, and we have yet to really see where it goes.
1,000,000%. And one of the things that I'm trying to work on here too is really trying to lock in on some of those older works, because the thing is like the pace at which video games, obviously they take 5 to 7 years to make, but there's always something new. And one of the inherent problems with that is that if you're not part of this like the 100 greatest video game songs ever written, there's a danger of losing. I mean, if you even look at the numbers on a YouTube video from something from like 20 years ago, it will never play like something modern. And part of that's like algorithmic issues and stuff. And so it really does require people to step up and be like, hey, this random song from a random game that, I don't know, I can't even think of an example right now, but like, it's important to retain that, because it's valuable. Just because it doesn't get plays or clicks.
Yeah, it's the whole butterfly effect. Like we're not sure what is influencing what, and I think that's really interesting and key. To be able to map that out would be a brilliant and challenging project. But anyway, Well, I probably should get back to my Disney mix because I do have to.
Yes. Wait, let me do the ending. I have to do the outro.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Adam, for coming on the channel. How dare you? You're going to end my No, I'm just kidding. Well, seriously, thank you, Adam, for coming on. And, you know, I feel like we could talk for like 4 hours, but we're both working individuals. I have to film a couple other videos. You have to go do Disney things. And yeah, thanks a ton for listening to these tracks with me. And thank you everybody for watching this. I hope you gleaned something really interesting. I certainly did. And yeah, thanks a ton, and we'll see you later.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.